Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. Amazing crowd. I was at an event in Los Angeles a few weeks ago that had 12,000 people, and I thought it was huge. And then I came to this thing, and there's 70,000 people. So, wow, incredible. So, my name is Santiago Lyon, and for the last year, I've been working at Adobe as we get into the business of licensing all kinds of imagery. Photography, illustrations, templates, all kinds of stuff. Today I'm going to take you on a little journey exploring how image usage and the delivery of that imagery has changed over the 35 years that I've been in the business of photography, from the mid-1980s to the amazing digital world we live in today. From a time when a black and white picture took literally a quarter of an hour to send over a telephone line to today's instantaneous color imagery delivered to your device on your social media feed, whatever it might be. And so the question in this crowded environment that we have to ask ourselves is, how do we stand out above the noise? How do we embrace social media and mobile technology to harness its storytelling power? But first, I thought I'd introduce myself and give you a little run through my career so that you can see where I'm coming from and some of the things that I've gone over in my career. So I was an award-winning photographer, a war photographer for 20 years. And then for 15 years, I was running the world's largest photo agency, the Associated Press. I was born in Spain to American parents and grew up in Ireland, in case you're trying to place the strange accent and the strange name. At the age of 17, I started working as an apprentice photographer for Reuters news agency in Europe, photographing sports and news events around the European continent. And then between 1989 and 1999, I was sent to a variety of hazardous assignments around the world, a half a dozen or so wars, calamities, disasters, plane crashes, volcanoes, earthquakes, all sorts of stuff. One of the assignments that I spent a lot of time covering was the siege of Sarajevo in the early 1990s, where eventually 10,000 people would perish as part of the disintegration of the former Yugoslavia. I was wounded there in 1995, operated on in the city, evacuated by the French military, and 6 months later I was back at work. So I know a little bit about perseverance and about tenacity, and those are skills and traits that I think serve us all well. I wanted to show you some of the pictures from that time. This is a family evacuating, fighting in Sarajevo. This is a young militiaman mourning the death of a colleague, also very young, 23 years old, during the siege. And as usual, children so resilient, but at the same time imitating adults. Here they play at war while the real war rages. From Bosnia, I ended up going eventually to Afghanistan. A fairly simple assignment. I was told, go photograph the Taliban militia who'd just taken over the country. This is a group that hates non-Muslims, hates Americans, and where photography is technically illegal. And so there was I, an American non-Muslim professional photographer. Easy, right? So I had to make friends with characters like this, which was really accomplished through getting to know them, trying to find some common ground, drinking lots of tea, and photographing the conflict there. As usual, civilians bear the brunt of the violence in modern warfare, and here a mother mourns the death of her children in an airstrike. But I was also able to make pictures like this, showing women lining up to get aid prior to a brutal winter, and one of them has lifted up her burqa to better see what's going on. This picture, taken in 1996, the following year became the poster for International Women's Day. And it was heartening to see imagery used for a good social cause, trying to call out the plight of women in Afghanistan at that time, who really were marginalized second-class citizens, denied education, treated as property, obliged to cover their faces. And so it was heartening to be able to make an image like this. For a brief time, this image was viral, an iconic image of its time, but of course that was a very different time, pre-internet and pre-social media. Today, we measure an image's importance not by how long it lasts in our collective memory necessarily, but by how quickly it's disseminated and how many people see it, how many people like it, how many people share it. Did it go viral? and one day's virus is replaced quickly by the next day's virus. From Afghanistan, it was to Kosovo for the final chapter of the disintegration of Yugoslavia. Here, a young child mourns their father's death. Refugees started fleeing into neighboring Albania in the face of violence, and here a family breaks down in tears after crossing into northern Albania. And finally, NATO troops came in to restore the peace and were welcomed like heroes in scenes reminiscent of the end of the Second World War, perhaps. This was to be my last assignment of this nature. After a decade of danger, I really only saw two possibilities if I were to continue: death or insanity. Death I was familiar with. I'd seen a lot of death. A lot of colleagues had been killed over the years. That line of work of a war photographer is extraordinarily dangerous and extraordinarily taxing psychologically. This image shows on the right my then colleague at the Associated Press, a Spanish cameraman, Miguel Gil Moreno, running alongside a militiaman. Miguel was killed the following year covering the violence in Sierra Leone. From one day to another, I decided to stop doing that kind of work, and I thought, that's it, that's easy, I've stopped. Little did I know that the next 2 years would be excruciatingly difficult as I wrestled not only with the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, but also with a sense of identity. Who was I? I was no longer the person, the persona that I had created. So thankfully, I was awarded a mid-career fellowship at Harvard University that allowed me to sort myself out, figure out what I wanted to do professionally, and then immediately after that, take the helm of the world's largest photo agency, which is the Associated Press, that has literally hundreds of staff photographers and thousands of freelance photographers around the world producing thousands of images every day. I was only the fourth person since the 1940s to take that job, and it meant leading all of these people and improving not only their situation and their safety and their preparedness for whatever they were covering, but also leading them into a new era of photography, the digital era of photography, where all of a sudden images were being delivered faster and faster. But before that period, we would travel the world with portable darkrooms in large metal suitcases, and we would set up film darkrooms, usually in the bathrooms of our hotel rooms. And we would make 8 by 10 or 20 by 25 centimeter prints. And we would type out with a typewriter captions that we would stick to these prints. And then we would disassemble the telephones in our hotel rooms and connect very expensive proprietary machines to be able to deliver our pictures. Machines that look like this. This, believe it or not, is the ground zero of social media back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. The image would spin, an optical eye would read the tonality of the image, convert it into an analog signal that would then be sent down a telephone line, where another machine at the other end would reconvert it back into an image. 15 minutes for one black and white picture. A color picture, if you wanted to do that, took 45 minutes because you had to send it 3 times, one for each of the separations: cyan, magenta, yellow. Eventually, these transmission times would be cut in half and cut in half again, but it still meant that the view of the world was controlled by a few big media companies: AP, the Associated Press, Reuters news agency, Agence France Presse, and they would tell the story of the world between them, maybe in 1,000 images. And when you compare that to what's happening now, where something like 2 billion images are uploaded every day, or 300 hours of video are uploaded every day to YouTube, it just shows you how far we've come in 25 years. Back then, if you were traveling someplace that didn't have a landline system, you would take your own portable satellite that looked like this, a big box about this big, probably weighed 50 kilos. You'd point it into the sky, hook up with a satellite until it beeped, then connect it, send your pictures over that. $50 a minute was the transmission costs. If you wanted to send video, you would send for 30 minutes of video transmission would equal 1 minute of real video. So it was really clunky technology. But as the time went on, and as at about the same time I took the helm at the AP, we saw everything speeding up. we really saw the democratization of visual communication. Digital technology was the great leveler, and it allowed imagery to be taken and sent in real time by pretty much anywhere around the world. And at the same time, it began to put huge pressure on media companies, which, curiously enough, at the beginning of the internet, decided that it was a good idea to give away all their content for free. And their advertising models were shifting from the once reliable paper advertising to the digital advertising, which was very lucrative and remains very lucrative, but scattered over multiple properties where it eventually settled where it is today, the advertising that is around Facebook and Google. We see social media now as fast becoming an important source of news, as evidenced by these figures from the Pew Research Institute or Center in the United States. Traditional media companies now recognize that their readers will pay for quality and are in the process of setting up sustainable subscription models that will ensure their survival over the longer term. They also make their content shareable over social media, which accounts for some of this. But it also means that essentially everybody is now a storyteller and everybody is now a publisher, whether they're retweeting or reposting information from traditional news sources or whether they're gathering their own information based on what they see happening in front of them. So now if something happens in the street, chances are somebody's filming it or making pictures of it with their cell phones or whatever device they have. And of course, social media has that enormous storytelling power. But it's really much more than that. When most of us think about social media, we think about it as a tool that's changed our lives. And it is. It's a tool that allows us to keep in touch with our friends and family all over the world. It's a tool that allows businesses to reach customers in new ways. And it's a tool that allows organizations to attract followers and rally support. But when you look at it from a different perspective, you realize that it's so much more than just a tool. Social media simultaneously not only reflects the world around us, but it also inspires us. When social media's reach and capabilities grow, it opens up a unique window into people's lives. We now know what makes them happy and sad. We know what makes people laugh and cry. We know what they want to buy, and we know what they want to sell. We know what motivates them to take action against injustice. We don't have to guess anymore. We know it because they posted it, they shared it, they tweeted it, they snapped it, or whatever else is to come in the social media front. But it isn't just a data source. This new insight is in itself a source of inspiration. We've been inspired to experiment with new formats to translate our compelling stories across different mediums. We've been inspired to find new ways to reach people worldwide. We have a space to invent, to mix, to remix. But for all of the things social media has given us, curiously enough, it's also made our job a little bit harder. Previously, we only had to worry about the sort of main media touch points, print, TV, to some extent radio. But now we're being asked to create more content that spans across thousands of channels, and we're being asked to do it faster, with fewer resources, less time, less money. And everything we create has to stand out and stand up to a consumer base who expects more out of it. So no matter what your business is, we're all in the business of building experiences and relationships. That means that people crave uniqueness and, where available, personalization. We have to get personal on a global scale, or our work will never break through the noise. And our job is even harder when you add mobile to the picture. With the democratization of devices, anybody can be a content creator or a publisher. And we're seeing it across YouTube, Netflix, Snapchat, Instagram, Amazon. We're seeing technology companies who were purely only concerned about the delivery of information now becoming concerned about the creation of information, whether it's fact or fiction. We're seeing more and more. When you look at what Netflix is doing nowadays, just the budgets that they're dedicating to producing original content, it's astonishing. And even roles that wouldn't typically be labeled as creative are full of tasks that require creating. Business development teams are creating, marketing managers are creating, social media teams are creating. And from an audience perspective, the way people are consuming content has changed dramatically with the advent of mobile. It used to be that you would look at social media on your laptop, in your office, in a library. Now we know what the dynamic is. A lot of us roll out of bed, or we don't even get out of bed. We roll over, grab a device, check whatever we're checking, email, social media. We become so absorbed in it that it begins to interfere when family dynamics. We're in a car, we don't realize we've arrived at the restaurant until we're there. The flight attendant is grabbing phones out of people's hands. It's really becoming crazy, the level of engagement. A British study found that between laptops, tablets, and smartphones, consumers switch between screens up to 21 times an hour. So imagine, everybody is looking at different screens for different purposes, and we have to catch viewers' attention. Regardless of what our job is, if it's in this business of reaching out to people and being creative, we have to grab their attention, otherwise it's pointless. But we not only have to grab their attention, we also have to illustrate key messages in terms of what we're trying to convey, all while staying on brand if we're working for companies in a space that's more and more constrained. And of course, we need tools to help us do that, and a content marketplace that helps us fill in the gaps so that we can be effective doing this. One way to do this is through movement, connecting more audiences on social media by upping our movement game. Movement is processed, visual information is processed 60,000 times faster than the written word. And with more movement in our design and campaigns, we can capture our audience's attention. But when most of us think about incorporating movement, we think about video, and for good reason. 90% of the information sent to the brain is visual, and retention of a message goes up 95% when video is involved. It's estimated that by 2019, 80% of all internet traffic will incorporate video to some degree. And as technology improved, we started experiencing more content in video. And then YouTube came, which was the perfect basket for everybody to put their video into. Designated a space for creators of all types to share their work and test out new formats. And today, content receives 94% more views when there's video included. So Samsung took advantage of this trend a few years ago when they developed a multi-year project with one of the most creative and well-known people, Casey Neistat, who has upwards of 10 million followers on video. They knew that consumer demographics were changing, and they needed a way to create a relationship with millennials. Instead of treating social media like a tool and throwing together a one-shot solution, they offered Casey Neistat and other creatives the chance to put together their own campaigns as Samsung Productions. And it's a good thing they did, because according to Adweek, 50% of Generation Z say they can't live without video. So here's a small example of what Casey did with YouTube for Samsung.
Allow me to introduce the rest of us. We're the makers, the directors, and the creators of this generation. We don't have big award shows or huge budgets or fancy cameras, but what we do have are our phones and duct tape and parking lots and guts. And we have ideas we need to share. We know it's not the size of the production that matters, it's what you make. We don't create because we have to, we create because we love to. And we've captured billions of moments from different angles, for different reasons, for millions of viewers, but with one thing in common. When we're told that we can't, we all have the same answer. Watch me.
So today we can make the most of our video content on social media in a few different ways. Because there's so much video out there, we have to find a way to grab viewers' attention fast. It only takes about 3 seconds before someone decides whether they're going to stick on a page. And if you're dealing with mobile, you've got less than 2 seconds. So you need to figure out ways to grab people's attention. One way to do it is by inserting what appears to be random motion, just as a movement thing to get people's attention. Another way to do it is incorporating text motion graphics into your video. For example, lower thirds, a design feature that lets you layer motion graphics over the video on your mobile devices. Facebook found that 85% of videos were watched without audio, so this notion of subtitling and lower thirds, hugely important. And while we're going to continue to see video as key, still imagery remains an increasingly important thing. The ability to look at a still image at your pace, on your schedule, helps it resonate. And we see that visuals, still images are an important part of social media, but also traditional media. And we see that most media, news media online, if you go, they'll have a still picture as a window. And the right image can move us into action, which for a lot of companies, as they deal with the area of social responsibility, becomes huge. In fact, in 2019, it's predicted that sustainability and global warming will be incorporated into more ads than ever before as companies attempt to reach their consumers and relate to them. Or we can deal with color. In today's selfie-oriented world, color becomes an important part of people's identity. And so the Pantone Institute had gathered trending data about color by analyzing social media posts. They found out what resonated with people and how we can do a better job of connecting with them. And now their color trend helps guide the creative process for both brands and artists. In addition to color, we can string static images together using Facebook or Instagram's carousel feature. Studies have shown that engagement goes up by 72% with the carousel feature. Or we can use a rapid succession of still photographs. Cinemagraphs are another way that campaigns breathe life into stills. You can see how Coca-Cola used moving water to evoke a hot day and a cold drink, or Stranger Things, the TV series, using flashes of lightning there, or Chanel using motion to help enhance stuff. Or you can take a visual trend, and I'm going to show you a quick segment of an ad that Bacardi did using the boomerang effect, which is popular on social media. They decided to incorporate it into one of their ad campaigns. You get the message. But it doesn't stop with videos and images. Graphics are another way to capture viewers' attention. The Golden State Warriors, in this case, using graphics to take you right into the basketball experience, to illustrate the point through quick changes of perspective. Or you can save yourself some time and use graphics templates. And when you couple the marketplace with templates, you have everything you need. As you can see here, another example of graphics templates. So really that's what I wanted to take you through, this progression from the quarter-hour black and white transmissions that I started with to this day of massive saturation and how to differentiate ourselves. We don't know what the future is going to hold. Are we going to have more wearables? Are we going to have smell over the internet? Are we going to have tactile experiences? Are we going to have easily wearable goggles? I really don't know, but what I do know is that it's ours to create. So let's get out there and do it. Thank you very much.